Ever wonder what everyone's doing on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. They're saving, planning, and budgeting all before dessert.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
First of all, you'll notice the mayor is sitting on a love seat, and I wanted to be on that seat with him, but they suggested that it would be better this way. Nice to have you here. Is everyone having a good time so far? I love this. My first time here. It's really wonderful, and it's so completely different than what we experience on Mackinac Island at Grand Hotel. It's special. My guest here, Mike Duggan, Mayor Mike Duggan, was in Washington, D.C. recently, the U.S. Conference of Mayors. It was their winter meeting, spoke on a variety of topics, including the importance of investing in small businesses and building thriving communities. And you should know, while he was there, NBC asked if they could speak to him. So he was on the Meet the Press Now. He is the go-to guy now in our country to talk about turning economies around, turning cities around, turning states around. The unemployment rate was huge, 20% whatever, when he became the mayor of the great city of Detroit. He reinvented the city's economic development strategy to start landing manufacturing plants again. The Jeep plant, we remember, Plant Zero, Factory Zero, numerous supplier plants. Reinventing economic development is where we are again in the city of Detroit, in the state of Michigan, and everybody has been coming to you asking your plan. Yeah. What are you saying to them, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm excited to see how many people are still here at the end of the day. But, you know, the world is changing so fast, and if you're here, you realize it. But Paul W., you're right. When I started in 2014, we had a 20% unemployment rate. I had people across the city with high school degrees wanting to work hard, and we hadn't had a new manufacturing plant come to Detroit in 20 years. And I sat down and said, this city's got no future if our residents can't get a good paying job. And so we have to become the easiest place in America to site a manufacturing plant. And I only knew one way to do that. I went and I sat with Bill Ford. I sat with Mary Barra. I sat with Sergio Marchionne. I said, tell me what you need and how can I bring value to your company? I don't want you to give me any charity. And they all agreed that the next time they sited a parts plant, they'd have the company come talk to me first. And so it was Bill Ford first. Flex Engage, Shad Khan was going to make parts for Ford trucks in Western Wayne County. And Shad came to see me and said, some reason I have to talk to you, but I've only got 30 days to make a decision because when these auto companies put a new product line out, it's on a very tight timeline. And I said, I'm going to get you a site quickly. We got a site on the east side of Detroit. I put in a special window for them for all the permitting so they could build it there faster than any place else. Got prompt approval through city council, got the neighbors on board, and when they went to hire 500 people, 15,000 showed up. And that shocked everybody and said, wait a minute, Detroit's got competitive assets. We started landing one plant after another, and when Jeep decided they had to have a 5,000 employee assembly plant, all the plants were being built in South Carolina and Georgia and the like in the South. I had this idea that I could close St. Jean Street and buy a bunch of land and put some land together. And I said to Sergio, just let me compete. And he said, I've got 600-acre cornfields in different parts of the country we can build on now. I said, just let me compete. They went from 5 to 3 to the final 2. And the interesting thing was their HR department was on my side because they said, if we're going to fill 5,000 jobs, you know what Detroit has got in Detroit at Work? We were tied into everybody looking for a job in the city. They all came through our 9 Detroit at Work offices. Detroit is going to do the hiring for us. They picked us, and their first 4,000 people were all Detroiters hired through our Detroit at Work program. We did the recruiting for them. We became the place in America where you called first if you wanted this kind of facility. But about 2 or 3 years ago, we're down to our last probably 2 or 3 sites in the city big enough, I'm looking at the jobs of the future, right? And the jobs of the future are not in the manufacturing plants. It's an important part of things, but it is these tech companies. It is keeping the founders who start here in here. It is convincing the innovative companies in America they want to be here. And so, Paul W., now what we did is I brought my team in and said, okay, guys, you mastered the manufacturing thing. We are now going to learn everything there is to know about this, because I want to have the best city in the Midwest. If you want to have a career in innovative industries, or you want to start an innovative company. And that's what we're doing. We're reinventing ourselves.
It's even being called the innovation economy, basically.
It is.
And where we have done so well, and you have done so well with Detroit, overall the state is falling behind. And shockingly, not just behind the Silicon Valley. We kind of understand. Even Texas and Florida. This one's hard for me to take. We're falling behind Columbus, Ohio. What the hell?
Right.
I mean, they don't even have a football team that can beat Michigan. How did this happen?
Oh.
What are we doing to attract the companies we need to keep the attention of our talented young people, which I know is one of your personal goals for being mayor, and I'm sure that will extend in your run for governor?
Well, it is amazing. And as you mentioned before, I'm spending a lot of time in Silicon Valley. I spoke at J.P. Morgan's conference for the 100 biggest tech companies in America. Dan Gilbert and I just spoke at Reid Hoffman's Masters of Scale conference for the Silicon Valley startups. And they keep inviting me out to speak. The J.P. Morgan one was amazing. I was after Elon Musk and before Sam Altman, okay? I'm looking saying, how did I get on this stage? And I was the only elected official. And it turned out the reason is that the San Francisco CEOs love San Francisco every bit as much as Detroit CEOs love Detroit. And they saw the way we turned things around here between the cooperation between the government and the public sector and the private sector, and they wanted me to talk about what do they do about the Tenderloin District and how do they partner with city government. And while I'm there, I'm saying, I'm glad to talk to you about this. You tell me, how do I become relevant in the city of Detroit for your next spinoff? You can't possibly source all the talent in this country into Silicon Valley and Austin, Texas, and Miami. And you're taking a whole lot of it from Michigan to start with. And so this is what's developing, a really good conversation between those companies and us. And one of the things that reality is Columbus has had better leadership. We're getting beat. You expect to have a hard time competing with Miami. But if we don't wake up, we're going to be behind Pittsburgh and Chicago and Columbus. And that's what we're focused on now.
That's why you were spending as much time as you have been lately in Silicon Valley in recent months, including the Reid Hoffman's Masters of the Scale conference with 300 startups. We can't continue to be behind Columbus. That's a given. We need to do whatever we can do. When I knew we were going to be talking, Mayor Duggan, I went looking for some things, and I was stunned to find the San Francisco Standard. And here's the cover story. It's got our mayor, Mike Duggan, on the front page, and it says, "Is San Francisco the next Detroit? Motor City's mayor can teach us a thing or two." What was that all about?
Yeah. So this it's a newspaper owned by Mike Moritz, who started Sequoia Capital, who funded pretty much every Silicon Valley company. And Mike Moritz asked me to come out and speak. And it is a great thing to do that. But as you can imagine, and I'm at dinner with the CEO of Instacart, overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, and all these CEOs, they live near each other. They walk to dinner together. There is a community of support there that we're starting to create here, but it is remarkable how much they knew about each other's businesses. I had a couple of the CEOs of some of the major cryptocurrencies there. They all knew what each other was doing, and they were all supporting it. But I say, okay, let's talk about this. And I have learned more about artificial intelligence. I'm sure you've talked about it quite a bit here today. Of course, the high school and college kids know about it, using ChatGPT. But they're telling me that just like your 8 and 10-year-olds today are totally intuitive on the iPads, in 10 years, 8 and 10-year-olds are going to be totally intuitive on how to use artificial intelligence to get things done. This is where it's going, right? And there's parts of the country that are going to be ahead and gain from it, and there are parts of the country that are going to be wondering what happened. And so this is me. I'm like, okay, you're the mayor of Detroit. What do? You guys need huge data warehouses. And the amount of energy, the amount of data that it consumes to be competitive is enormous. I said, okay. I said, no, it's not that easy to build a data warehouse. You got to have a power grid that can handle the data warehouse. Well, we know what happens here. We get a storm and we've got 100,000 houses out, right? We do not have a very solid power grid in this state. These are all pieces that we're going to have to put in place. And it's embarrassing. Columbus is way ahead of us in the power grid, way ahead of us on data warehouses, way ahead of us on venture capital funding for the startups. Now, they're not ahead of us on affordability. They're not ahead of us on a world-class airport. They're not ahead of us on the best universities producing the talent. And they're not ahead of us on the customers who are here. We have advantages. And so, we're doing it now. TechTown has been our innovation center for a while, but now we got 5 either open or starting. New Lab, of course, you've heard a great deal about. The Henry Ford Future of Health of the Michigan State Research is going to be a 3rd one. Dan Gilbert and the Life Sciences corridor he's doing on I-375 will be a 4th. And of course, the University of Michigan Center for Innovation on Grand River. We're starting to build those centers. And I know you've heard about Black Tech Saturday, but it's an amazing thing to experience because you see community coming together. This is what we got to do. And this event is community coming together. You're going to have to be a part of us competing with the other cities in the Midwest. And I guess my question is, are we up for it?
Those of us who've been around a little while remember when we had the brain drain and we were losing kids, but they were leaving primarily to Chicago. I mean, they went a lot of places, but they were primarily going to Chicago. Why were they leaving? We didn't have any jobs for them. When did the transition happen where Michigan's population is now being said to stagnate because of the net loss of college graduates? In an average year, about 9,000 residents with bachelor's degrees or higher are moving out of the state. We're leading the U.S. in losing Gen Zers.
Yeah.
When did that transition happen?
Last year, the most net loss of Gen Zers of any state in America, but this isn't something that just happened. Since 1990, Michigan's population is the 2nd worst in America. The worst is West Virginia, where they closed the coal mines. We're 2nd since 1990. And this is an issue that we have not come together on as a state. And you know what's happening. You talk to young folks and say, where is your future? And a lot of them don't see the opportunities here. Now, one of it's job opportunities. The other is, do you have a city where you want to live? And you've seen what we've tried to do. We set out in Detroit to say, we want to have a place that when you graduate from college, you want to live. And in Detroit, you've seen what we've done. We've got the 4 professional sports teams. We've got the riverfront going. We've got Campus Martius and all the open spaces. We've got the concerts. We've got the activities. And we have tons of young people moving into the city. Grand Rapids has some of the same areas. But you have to do 2 things, a job opportunity and a community where you want to live. We're making significant progress on a place where young people want to live. And now we got to create the tech industries here for the other people.
Education is always important. We always hear that as being important for people who are maybe deciding to move to Michigan. They want to bring their family, but they want to know that their kids have a good shot at a great education. As mayor, you don't have as much control of education as governor, you'd have a little bit more control of education. Give me some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Sandy doesn't want me to do a campaign speech here today.
No, but I asked you. I didn't. Sandy didn't talk to me, so
but
we usually talk.
But again, take a look at what has happened. 8-year-olds in this state, 60% are not reading at grade level. We're 43rd in the country. This has been true across several administrations on both sides. And the point is, at what point do we put serious money into the schools, but also demand accountability from those schools? And if they're not reading at grade level by 4th grade, talking about training in more advanced things, you've fallen behind. We need to address that issue, and we need to have the kind of familiarity that they ought to have on the curriculum. And so those are going to be pieces to produce the kids. Now, you've got some really good things going on here. You've got Google running classes on tech certification over at the train station, where kids who are high school, just graduated from high school, can actually get certified in programming and go straight into jobs. And you've got 2 or 3 other organizations doing that. Pieces are bubbling up, but there's not a concerted plan. It's a bunch of rebels basically deciding, I'm going to do this here on my own. And what we got to figure out how to do is come together so all the different pieces, I mean, think about how many people you heard today who are doing their own thing in the right direction. Is anybody articulating it as a coherent plan to say, okay, Chicago's here, Columbus is here, Pittsburgh is here, and we are here? And the thing I talk about is this, and it may seem simple, but I thought about this a lot. My great-grandfather, James Kelly, in the late 1800s owned a blacksmith shop at Michigan and 31st Street. He shoed horses. One of his customers going back and forth from Detroit to Dearborn was Henry Ford. My great-grandfather was put out of business by Henry Ford in the Model T. He went to work for Ford as a craftsman and had a much higher standard of living, raised the family in a nice house in Detroit, moved from being a blacksmith to the auto industry. We were the center of innovation. But if my great-grandfather had lived in Ames, Iowa, and been put out of business by the auto industry, he'd have probably gone to work for wages on a farm. The whole family future would be the same, would have been changed. I want to think about this. As the economy of this country moves to an innovative economy, and AI comes for a whole lot of jobs. There are areas of this country that are going to benefit enormously because they were ready for it, and there are areas of this country that are going to be left behind. And the challenge we have right now is, Michigan's not in crisis right now, but 5-10 years from now, if we aren't thinking this through, it's going to be the other areas of the country that we envy.
So what are we doing? Because what we get from what we're hearing from you right now, Mr. Mayor, is obviously we all are hearing about AI companies. Some of us don't really even understand what that means or what they're going to do. Some of us are certain they're going to replace us at our jobs. We don't know. But what are we doing to attract those AI companies, attract maybe the data centers? And I heard that some guy just donated $100 billion to America, and Michigan was named as one of the places getting one of his data centers.
Yeah, they're not donating; they're building. Yes.
I'm sorry. But I mean, they chose Michigan to get part of that $100 billion initially, and they didn't choose everybody, but they chose Michigan. And then we know that we've long time had a trouble or problematic energy grid. What can we do about those 3 major things that also go back to keeping the young talent graduating from some of our great colleges or bringing back people?
So the governor just did made 2 significant steps in the right direction. You saw this chaos in lame duck, but a couple of things actually came out of it. One was the tax breaks for the data centers to make them economically viable here in the state of Michigan. And the second was the R&D tax credits. And I couldn't believe how hard the governor had to fight for this. We give all kinds of support for manufacturing, and we all support that. But if you were in the innovative economy and you wanted R&D, there was very little support for you. And so the state took some good steps in the right direction, but we're going to have very serious conversations about the energy grid. Every time there's a rate increase, there's all kinds of backlash. They scale it back and the like, and we get a little better than we were before. And renewables play a role. I'm building 200 acres of solar panel fields, but bringing the Palisades nuclear plant on the western part of the state back online, we're going to have to think in terms of energy in ways that we have not before. And you can say it's terrible, data warehouses chew up too much energy, we don't want it, and that's okay, but we're going to be an agricultural state because the rest of America is recognizing where that is. And what it is going to take is folks like the people in this room who understand. What does AI mean? I've got a sister-in-law who is a radiologist at the University of Michigan. She reads x-rays as people are being diagnosed. And I don't know whether this will be true or not, but in theory, AI can look at all the things that you teach a doctor to observe on a particular image and interpret it and make suggestions. If radiologists have to worry about AI coming for their jobs, think about how many areas in this country can be disrupted, but also think about how much wealth can be created for those who know how to use it and put that productivity into building wealth and value. And I just want to be the place where you go. Here's the other thing we can do. The University of Michigan is building that grad school, which is going to have an AI component to it. Stephen Ross comes to town. He's maybe the biggest developer in the country, built Hudson's Yard in New York, is building with the Illiches. And he said, I want to build buildings where the greatest tech companies want to have their headquarters. He says, which means I have to show them we have a competitive advantage on talent, right? And he put $100 million into that University of Michigan grad school. If you haven't seen it, drive down Grand River. It is being constructed very quickly right now. Stephen Ross thinks globally. I'm going to build my incubators and my offices here, and we're going to produce the top talent in AI, in software engineering, in robotics and the like right here. So I can say to the companies, what's our competitive advantage? And part of our competitive advantage is going to be our workforce.
You know, one of the things, I'm an observer. I'm not a journalist or a newsman. I'm an opinion caster as a talk show host. And one of the things I've observed about you, Mayor Duggan, is that you've never been a part of the us versus them way that politics has become in this country. And we are all pretty much sick of the Democrats trying to hijack the Republicans when they have a plan, or the Republicans trying to hijack the Democrats when they have a plan, because neither side wants the other side to look good. But the losers in all of that are we, the people. You've never done that. You know, I don't know, you all remember when the city council and the mayor's office didn't get along. It was like every week we'd say, what's the newest fight between what the mayor wants and what the city council wants? You fixed that immediately. You never have had that problem. And you've always looked to work with people to get things done. Did you just do that because you knew it was the best way to work, or did Ed McNamara teach you that?
Certainly we built Metro Airport and Comerica Park and Ford Field when I was in the county, all on bipartisan support. When I was at the Detroit Medical Center, we had bipartisan support on the mission for running the hospitals, but I've been very fortunate with the city council that we've had. And I'll give you an example. Train station sat there empty for 40 years. And Bill Ford, I heard he was looking for a place where the folks were going to work on the electric and autonomous vehicles of the future. And I heard he was looking at Silicon Valley and Ann Arbor. So I went and saw him, and I said, I want you to think about Detroit. And here's our competitive advantage. You may want to take the students graduating from Michigan, but once they graduate, they want to live in Detroit. This is how you're going to have an advantage. And Bill said, okay, I'll put you in the mix if I can find the right location. But Bill wanted a center that would attract talent, would be something special. It didn't look like the Glass House, right? And he was the one who hit on the train station and called me up and he said, I got the site, and I'm not just going to buy the train station. I'm going to get this old abandoned DPS book building. I'm going to make it into a new lab with startups. He had this whole vision. I went to city council and said, there is no way you're going to take a book depository building that burned 30 years ago, a train station that was abandoned 40 years ago, and get them to invest without giving them significant tax breaks. In Detroit, we don't write a check to somebody who builds something, but if they're going to pay $500 million in new taxes over the next 20 years, we'll give them a discount at $250 million. I'll take $250 million instead of an empty train station. But when these issues come up, you know what happens. People show up. He's rich enough. Don't give him a break. He should pay the whole cost. If that's going to be your attitude, nothing's going to happen. I've been very fortunate that City Council has had the courage to stand up and say, no, we are going to reuse these buildings. We are going to bring the train station back. We are going to build new lab. I'll take the political hit because it's the right thing. And Detroit's benefited enormously. I haven't vetoed I'm in my 12th year. I haven't vetoed a single action of City Council.
That's incredible.
In 12 years. It's been a great partnership.
We have seen, you've proved what's possible by bringing people together to solve tough challenges. You've done this in all your terms in Detroit as mayor. Sorry, Sandy, I believe you'll do that as governor of the great state of Michigan, and I thank you for spending time with us right now, which we're out of. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Ever wonder what everyone's doing on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. They're saving, planning, and budgeting all before dessert.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?